The December wind slammed against the rusted shutters of Ethan's garage like an angry sea crashing into a sinking boat. Midnight had already passed. Most of the small town of Grayfield was fast asleep, but Ethan Hunt, 26, was still wide awake, wiping grease off his trembling hands after pulling his 16-hour shift. He wasn't just fixing old engines. He was trying to keep the lights on. The garage had once belonged to his late father. Now, Ethan lived in the tiny back room behind it, with peeling wallpaper, a single rusted cot, and a space heater that coughed more than it warmed. He didn't complain. What mattered to him was survival, honesty, and never turning his back on someone in need, something his mom, before she disappeared, had raised him to believe in. He didn't expect company that night, but when he walked back toward his garage after locking up, he heard it, crying, soft, muffled. His steps froze. He turned his head toward the shadows by the tool cabinet. That's when he saw her. A woman, maybe in her 20s, was curled up on the cold concrete floor, hugging her knees. Her eyes met his, wide and full of fear. Her lips trembled. "I am sorry," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I didn't know where else to go. Please don't call anyone." Ethan stood still for a second. She was drenched, shivering. She wore nothing but a thin jacket, jeans, and shoes soaked through from the snow. He took a slow step forward. "Hey, it's okay. I'm not going to call anyone." Her shoulders trembled harder, but she didn't move. He looked at the single cot in the back room. There was only one bed, and she looked like she hadn't eaten or slept in days. "You can stay here tonight," he said, taking off his own jacket and gently placing it on her shoulders. "I'll sleep outside." She blinked at him like she couldn't believe what she'd just heard. "You do that?" He gave her a tired smile. "It's just one night." She didn't ask his name. He didn't ask hers. By the time the first light of dawn pushed through the oil-streaked windows, Ethan woke up shivering on the floor outside his garage. She was gone. Only the jacket remained, folded neatly on the cot. He waited all day, and the next. But the girl who cried in his garage never returned. Until the town started whispering. Until the sheriff's truck pulled up outside his shop 2 days later. And everything Ethan thought he knew about the world, and kindness, was about to explode into chaos. The sheriff didn't knock. He marched straight into the garage like it was a crime scene, boots heavy with slush, eyes sharp with something Ethan couldn't read. 2 deputies followed close behind, tension humming in the air like an electric wire ready to snap. Ethan dropped the wrench in his hand. "What's going on?" Sheriff McCallan, a broad-shouldered man in his 50s, pointed to the cot. That where she stayed. Ethan froze. "Ooh, don't play down, son. We got security footage. Cameras from a store across the street. She was here, and she was important." The blood drained from Ethan's face. "I didn't hurt her. I let her sleep in my cot. I slept outside." McCallan gave him a long look, then slowly nodded. "I believe you." One of the deputies, younger and less patient, added, "But we still need you to come with us." Ethan's heart pounded in his chest as he grabbed his coat and followed them into the snow. The entire town of Grayfield had gathered around the garage. Neighbors, customers, strangers he didn't even recognize. They whispered, stared, and then came the sound. A low thrum, growing louder. The wind kicked up as the snow whirled into a frenzy. A black helicopter descended like a ghost from the clouds, landing in the empty lot beside the gas station. Ethan had never seen anything like it. Sleek, intimidating, government or billionaire level. He couldn't tell. The door swung open, and out stepped the woman. The same woman who'd been sobbing in his garage floor, now dressed in a long cream coat and black boots that screamed wealth. Her hair was pulled back neatly, her posture straight like a blade. But it was her eyes that hadn't changed. Still soft, still sad. Everyone went silent, even the sheriff. She walked straight up to Ethan, the entire town watching, and then did something no one expected. She hugged him, tight, like she owed him her life. "I'm sorry I left without saying thank you," she whispered in his ear. "I had to go. I couldn't risk anyone finding me until it was safe." Ethan blinked, stunned. "Ooh, who are you?" She pulled back slightly. "My name is Arya. Arya Langston. My father owns Langston Group." Ethan's mouth went dry. The Langston Group was one of the biggest tech conglomerates on the East Coast. Arya Langston wasn't just rich. She was royalty. "I ran away the night you found me," she said, "because my life was in danger." Ethan couldn't believe what he was hearing. Before he could reply, she stepped aside, motioning to the helicopter. "I need your help again," she said. "Only this time. The whole town's about to get involved." Grayfield would never be the same, and neither would Ethan. They flew him out that night. No time to pack. No explanations to the town. Just Ethan, his old boots, and a duffel bag he barely had time to sling over his shoulder. The only thing heavier than the snow on his coat was the weight of the eyes that watched him disappear into the sky beside a billionaire's daughter. They landed on a private estate just outside New York. Acres of pristine white stretching like silence around a marble mansion that felt colder than the air. Ethan stepped out of the helicopter, stunned. "This is your place." Arya shook her head. "No, this was my father's. Before he disappeared." "Disappeared?" Ethan's brows furrowed. "What are you talking about?" She turned to him, her voice low. "My father built Langston Group with his bare hands. But over the last few years, things started changing. He married a woman half his age. His board of directors started pushing him out. And then last month, he went missing. No goodbye. The company claimed he took a sabbatical. But you don't believe that." "I know he didn't." She looked away. "And I know who did it." Ethan swallowed hard. "Why me?" "Because when I ran," she said, "everyone I knew turned their backs on me. Everyone except you. You gave up your bed. You didn't ask who I was. You didn't look at me like a problem. You looked at me like a person." That hit Ethan like a freight train. No one had ever told him that before. Not in Grayfield. Not in his life. "I need someone I can trust," she said. "And I think the answers I'm looking for are buried back in Grayfield." He shook his head, confused. Why would anyone hide something in a town like that? Arya looked at him, her eyes darkening. "Because Grayfield is where Langston Group started. Before the skyscrapers. Before the billions. My father's first factory was built right there. And I think something's still hidden under it." Ethan stared at her. "You think someone buried your father's secret under my town?" She nodded. "And I think it's why I was almost killed." That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He sat on a silk-covered couch in a room bigger than his entire garage, staring out at the frost on the windows. He wasn't a detective. He wasn't rich. He didn't even own a proper winter coat. But something about her story, about the look in her eyes, told him this was bigger than any engine he'd ever rebuilt. The next morning, they flew back. And Grayfield was waiting. Except this time, it wasn't just neighbors whispering. There were black cars, flashing cameras, reporters, and something else, too. Someone had broken into Ethan's garage while he was gone. The cot was slashed open. The tools were gone, and spray painted across the walls in dripping red letters. "Stay out of this." Ethan stared at the message, jaw clenched. Whoever buried the truth didn't want him digging it up. But they just made a mistake. They threatened the wrong mechanic. The first person Ethan thought of was Old Man Ridge. Back in the day, Ridge used to work at the original Langston foundry, long before the company turned corporate. Everyone in Grayfield knew he hadn't stepped foot out of his cabin in years, claiming the past had teeth. Ethan stood on Ridge's rickety porch by nightfall, frost curling up the railings, snow whispering against his boots. Arya stood a few feet back, hood drawn low. When the door opened, the smell of engine oil and burnt wood rolled out. Ridge, half blind, squinted through cataract-clouded eyes. "Well, I'll be damned. Ethan Hunt, you look just like your old man. What brings you here? Ain't got a job for you no more." "I'm not looking for work, Ridge. I'm looking for the truth." The old man's smile faded. "You worked with Thomas Langston," Ethan continued. "The original factory. The basement. The documents. You knew." Ridge's jaw tightened. "That basement's been sealed for 20 years. It was never supposed to be opened again." Arya stepped forward. "My father built something down there. Something valuable. He never told me what, but I think it's the reason they took him." Ridge stared at her. Then, slowly, recognition dawned. "You're Arya," he said softly. "The baby he used to carry around in the break room. He adored you." She nodded, holding back tears. "Please, help us." That night, Ridge took them to the edge of town, where the old Langston foundry sat, boarded up and buried in snow, a ghost of an empire. "I kept the keys," he said, jangling a rusted ring in his shaking hand. "Don't ask me why. Maybe I always knew this day would come." The basement was colder than the grave. They pushed aside forgotten crates, dust-choked files, and finally, behind a false panel, Ethan found a steel door bolted shut. Ridge coughed. Your dad told me to seal this after the accident. Arya stiffened. Accident. He built a prototype, Ridge said. A data vault. Something that could store information beyond government access. Untraceable. Secure. He wanted to protect people's privacy, but the board saw dollar signs. They tried to steal it. He disappeared not long after. Ethan turned the bolts, his hands trembling. Inside the vault were rows of black drives. Files. Blueprints. Video logs. Names. Langston Group hadn't just tried to steal his invention. They'd been selling personal data on millions of people for years, hidden under fake subsidiaries, offshore accounts, and buried in Grayfield, the one place no one would ever look. Arya stared at the drives like they were ghosts. He tried to protect people, and they destroyed him for it. Ethan didn't speak. He didn't know how. What do you say when everything you've known about the world cracks open? Then, behind them, a slow clap echoed in the dark. They turned, and standing in the basement doorway was Arya's stepmother, Vivian Langston. She wore fur, diamonds, and a cold smile. I wondered how long it would take you to dig up the past. Arya's voice broke. Where's my father? Vivian's eyes glittered. Alive. For now. Ethan took a step forward, fists clenched. If you hurt him, you don't get it, do you? Vivian's voice was silk dipped in venom. This isn't a story about heroes and villains. This is business. Your little garage rat here. She sneered at Ethan. He just became collateral damage. That's when Ridge cocked the shotgun he'd been hiding under his coat for 20 years. You messed with the wrong town, the old man growled. And the wrong girl. In that basement, everything changed. Grayfield wasn't just a quiet town anymore. It was ground zero for a war. And Ethan? He just found his reason to fight. The storm broke over Grayfield like a reckoning. News vans lined the frozen roads. Armed guards from the Langston Group's private security detail clashed with local cops. Drones flew overhead. Social media was ablaze with leaked footage of Vivian Langston being confronted in the foundry's basement. And at the center of it all was a young mechanic who'd never even finished high school. Ethan Hunt, the kid who slept in oil-stained jeans, who never turned away someone in need, now stood before the nation as the man who uncovered one of the biggest tech scandals in modern history. But the war wasn't over yet. Arya uploaded the drives. Every document. Every recording. They didn't edit, polish, or filter anything. They gave it to a nonprofit press outlet known for whistleblower protection. Within 24 hours, Langston Group's stock plummeted. Government investigations launched. And then the phone rang. It was a number Arya hadn't seen in months. She answered in a whisper. Dad. The voice was weak, but real. I'm alive, Thomas Langston said from a secret hospital in Geneva. They kept me drugged. Hidden. I don't know how you found it all. She looked across the room at Ethan, who sat on the floor fixing her broken wristwatch with a pair of tweezers and a flashlight. I didn't do it alone, she said softly. 3 weeks later, Vivian Langston was arrested on live television trying to flee the country. Her charges ranged from conspiracy to kidnapping to corporate espionage. Ethan, meanwhile, refused every interview request. He didn't want the fame, but it came anyway. People from around the world sent letters to his tiny garage. Donations flooded his business website, enough for 5 lifetimes. And a man from Ford personally flew down to ask him to help redesign their new engine model. But Ethan didn't say yes. Not yet. Instead, he stood outside his garage one evening, the snow melting around him, and watched Arya fix the sign he'd been too busy to fix himself. She climbed the ladder in a flannel jacket 2 sizes too big, his jacket. What are you doing? He asked, giving this place a new name. The sign now read, Hunt and Langston, Restorations, Real and Otherwise. He chuckled. Sounds a little fancy for a guy who sleeps in a back room. She climbed down and looked at him. You didn't just fix my father's legacy, Ethan. You reminded the world that kindness still exists. That some people sleep on the floor just so a stranger can stay warm. He stared at her for a long moment. I didn't do it expecting anything. I know, she said. That's why it meant everything. They didn't kiss. Not yet. But the silence between them was soft, honest, earned. 1 year later, Grayfield had changed. The garage had been expanded, with apprentices from all over the country. Ethan had taken in 3 young teens from tough homes, teaching them engines, integrity, and how to spot trouble before it walks through the door. Arya built a nonprofit that offered whistleblower protection and technology ethics advocacy, headquartered right there in town. Thomas Langston returned to Grayfield quietly. He never rebuilt his empire. He just bought a small house on the edge of town and spent every Sunday with his daughter and the man who'd saved her. As for the man who once slept outside to keep a stranger warm, people still whispered his name. But Ethan never wanted the spotlight. He just kept fixing things. Engines. Hearts. Stories. Because in a world where people take and leave, sometimes all it takes is one night of kindness to change everything. And for Ethan Hunt, it was never about being a hero. It was about never turning away when someone needed help, even when no one else was watching.